Sexual polarity and long-term desire. Desire does not stay alive by accident. It stays alive through polarity, structure, truth, and regulated presence. Many men think long-term desire dies because time passes. That is too shallow. Desire usually weakens when polarity collapses, when emotional leadership disappears, when a man becomes approval hungry, when the relationship loses tension, admiration, play, and direction, or when safety gets confused with passivity. Sexual polarity and long-term desire is about protecting desire without becoming needy, manipulative, or theatrical. It is about understanding that long-term attraction is not built through performance. Rather, long-term attraction is built through masculine steadiness, grounded differentiation, emotional cleanliness, and the disciplined ability to remain a man she can feel, respect, and want over time. In Stoic wisdom, Epictetus wrote, "Some things are in our control and others not." Stoic-Apex translation. You cannot directly control another person's desire, but you can govern your frame, your body, your standards, your leadership, and the emotional climate you help create. That matters immediately. The needy man tries to manage desire from the outside. He pressures for reassurance, chases validation, over-explains, over-pursues, and slowly kills the very tension he wants to preserve. The grounded man does something else. He becomes the kind of man whose inner structure keeps attraction more available, because he is not constantly trying to squeeze certainty out of the bond. In Neurobiological Security, as taught by Stan Tatkin, thou shalt protect the safety and security of thy relationship at all costs. Stoic-Apex translation. Long-term desire does not grow in chaos. It grows best inside a bond that feels emotionally secure, relationally stable, and biologically safe. That is the balance sexual polarity and long-term desire will hold from beginning to end. Polarity without instability, leadership without domination, safety without softness, attraction without performance, devotion without self-abandonment. If you are building with Stoic-Apex, watch the full episode and comment with the one factor you think destroys long-term desire the fastest. The fastest: neediness, resentment, routine, disrespect, emotional chaos, or loss of direction. Desire needs difference, not dependency. Long-term desire does not feed on sameness. It feeds on tension, difference, mystery, admiration, and emotional contrast that still lives inside commitment. A man becomes less attractive when he collapses into over-availability, emotional dependence, and constant reassurance seeking. Not because love is bad. Because polarity weakens when he stops standing as a distinct, grounded presence and starts functioning as a hungry extension of the other person's mood. Long-term desire is one of the biggest sources of confusion in modern relationships. Men are told that being endlessly available, endlessly explaining, endlessly accommodating, and endlessly proving care will preserve attraction. Usually, it does the opposite. Care without spine becomes soft. Affection without direction becomes flat. Availability without self-respect becomes erosion. Sexual polarity needs difference. Not cruelty. Not games. Not instability. Difference. The woman must still feel that you are your own man. That you have standards. That you have a mission. That you have gravity. That you are close, but not collapsed. Available, but not engulfing. Devoted, but not self-erasing. That is why masculine differentiation matters. A woman cannot stay deeply attracted to a man she no longer feels as a man with shape. If he becomes emotionally shapeless, approval-driven, and over-accommodating, desire often starts turning into management, comfort, or roommate energy. This does not mean distance for its own sake. It means preserving structure. At work, men understand this naturally. A leader without a center gets ignored. A leader who bends with every emotional gust loses gravity. The same principle applies in relationships. If your emotional state is always negotiating for acceptance, you stop transmitting strength. So the question is not, how do I make her want me? The stronger question is, Am I living as a man whose presence still carries edge, structure, and direction? That is where polarity begins again. Safety and desire are not opposites. Many men make a second mistake. They think safety kills desire. So they become emotionally unavailable, harder, more withholding, or more confusing in an attempt to look strong. That also backfires. Because real desire in a long-term bond does not grow in the face of chronic threat. It grows in the union of safety and tension. Safety says, I can trust this man. He is emotionally governed. He does not weaponize distance. He does not panic under pressure. He does not humiliate me to feel powerful. He does not collapse when emotion enters the room. Tension says, he is not ordinary. He still has shape. He still has standards. He still has self-command. He still has a masculine edge. He is close, but not consumed. Long-term desire needs both. If you have tension without safety, you get volatility. If you have safety without tension, you often get flatness. The mature masculine task is to create a bond where the woman can relax and still feel your gravity. That is why nervous system mastery matters so much. Women do not only react to words. They react to state, consistency, tension, congruence, and the felt sense of whether the man in front of them is emotionally expensive or emotionally grounding. A man who is always reactive, suspicious, needy, resentful, or approval-driven makes desire biologically costly. His presence may still be familiar, but it no longer feels clean. Over time, attraction often shrinks because the relationship becomes too heavy to sustain romantically. But a regulated man is different. He can lead tension without flooding the bond. He can create attraction without creating fear. He can stay masculine without becoming harsh. He can stay affectionate without becoming engulfing. That is the sweet spot. Not sterile safety. Not dangerous chemistry. Grounded polarity. Neediness is one of desire's fastest killers. Neediness is not the same as affection. It is not the same as care. It is not the same as devotion. Neediness is pressure. It is the emotional demand that says, reassure me, pick me, prove it, text me back now, tell me where I stand, make me feel secure before I can hold myself. That pressure is costly. In Toltec wisdom, Don Miguel Ruiz teaches, don't take anything personally. Stoic-Apex translation. When a man personalizes every mood shift, every silence, every delay, and every emotional fluctuation, he turns the relationship into a courtroom for his insecurity. That is the beginning of desire erosion. Because the needy man stops engaging the woman as a person and starts engaging her as a regulator for his self-worth. Now every conversation carries a hidden demand. Every pause becomes a danger. Every difference becomes a threat. Every boundary becomes an injury. That kind of emotional atmosphere suffocates polarity. Neediness is heavy because it asks the other person to manage what a disciplined man should be learning to manage within himself. Neediness is where Stoic discipline and Toltec integrity come together. The disciplined man does not lie to himself about what he is doing. If he is chasing reassurance, he names it. If he is turning uncertainty into panic, he names it. If he is confusing intimacy with emotional dependence, he names it. That honesty matters because long-term desire is not strengthened by self-deception. A woman may care deeply for a needy man. She may comfort him. She may stay loyal to him. But attraction often weakens when she no longer feels his inner stance. That is why one of the strongest masculine corrections is simple. Stop making her responsible for the stability you have not yet built in yourself. That one principle restores more polarity than most men realize. So far, sexual polarity and long-term desire has established three foundations. First, long-term desire needs difference, not dependency. Second, safety and desire are not opposites. Third, neediness is one of the fastest ways to kill attraction. Routine kills tension when it has no counterbalance. Long-term desire rarely dies in a single dramatic moment. It fades through sameness without renewal, predictability without play, and structure without charge. Routine is not the enemy by itself. Routine becomes the enemy when it removes contrast. A relationship needs stability, but it also needs aliveness. It needs trust, but it also needs tension. It needs devotion, but it also needs freshness. Long-term desire is where many couples drift into a state of flatness. They become operationally efficient but erotically dull. They manage bills, schedules, errands, logistics, and family demands. But they stop generating the emotional contrast that keeps polarity alive. Desire needs reminders that the bond is still alive, not only functional. In Neurobiological Security, John Gottman's framework emphasizes small things often, and fondness and admiration, as daily builders of emotional connection and goodwill. Stoic-Apex translation. Long-term desire is not maintained by one grand gesture after months of emotional drift. It is fed by repeated moments of warmth, attention, appreciation, touch, humor, and directed presence. That means the masculine task is not only to stay stable. It is to keep the relationship from becoming deadened by pure repetition. Bring direction. Bring play. Bring presence. Bring a little unpredictability without instability. She should feel that the relationship is safe, but not stale. Known, but not flattened. Secure, but not lifeless. That is how routine stops being a sedative and starts becoming a container strong enough to hold renewed attraction. Admiration and respect feed desire. Desire is not sustained by comfort alone. It is fed by admiration. A woman may love a man deeply and still lose attraction if she no longer respects his frame, standards, emotional control, or direction. Respect is not everything, but when it weakens, desire often follows suit. Desire is why masculine self-command matters so much in long-term relationships. A man who can govern himself, carry weight, speak cleanly, and remain emotionally structured under pressure is more likely to remain attractive over time than the man who constantly leaks insecurity, softness without shape, or emotional dependence. In Machiavellian strategy, it emphasizes that nothing makes a prince so much esteemed as great enterprises and setting a fine example. Prince so much esteemed as great enterprises and setting a fine example. Stoic-Apex translation. Admiration grows when a man lives in a way that feels solid, directed, and worthy of esteem. Desire has a hard time surviving where admiration has died. That does not mean performance. It does not mean grandstanding. It does not mean ego theater. It means visible structure. A visible standard. A visible direction. Attraction often strengthens when a woman can still look at her man and feel. He is grounded, he is competent, he is carrying something, he is not ruled by mood, he is not asking me to parent his emotions. That is why respect and desire are deeply linked. When a man loses self-command, loses mission, loses truthfulness, or becomes chronically reactive, he often loses a layer of erotic weight too. Not because he became less lovable, but because he became less polarity-bearing. Admiration is fuel. Respect is fuel. Direction is fuel. Without them, long-term desire often starts running on fumes. Resentment poisons chemistry faster than most men realize. Resentment is one of the most destructive forces in a long-term bond. Because it quietly turns affection into tension, sex into distance, and familiarity into emotional contamination. A resentful man stops showing up cleanly. He may still be present physically, but his energy becomes heavy. His words become sharper. His warmth becomes conditional. His leadership becomes disguised punishment, poisoning the chemistry. In Toltec wisdom, Don Miguel Ruiz teaches, don't take anything personally. Stoic-Apex translation. Resentment grows when a man converts every disappointment, mood shift, mistake, or moment of distance into a personal injury against his identity. Once that happens, he stops relating to the woman in front of him and starts relating to the story in his head about what she means by everything. That story is dangerous because resentment does not create erotic tension. It creates emotional corrosion. The woman feels it. The room feels it. The body feels it. And once resentment becomes the hidden atmosphere, desire often begins to retreat because intimacy no longer feels clean. This is where truth alignment matters. A disciplined man has to ask, what is actually true here? What have I not addressed directly? What expectation did I never voice? What injury am I secretly feeding? What pattern needs a boundary instead of a grudge? That is a masculine question, because resentment is often an unspoken weakness masquerading as a silent strength. If something needs to be addressed, address it. If a standard needs to be named, name it. If hurt needs repair, seek repair. But do not sit in emotional poison and call that patience. Long-term desire needs emotional cleanliness. Resentment destroys cleanliness fast. Direction keeps the relationship from going flat. One of the strongest masculine functions in long-term attraction is direction. Not domination. Not control. Direction. A woman often feels safer and more attracted when the relationship has movement, shape, and intentionally. When the man can initiate, lead, decide, frame, and create forward motion, the bond tends to feel more alive. When that disappears, the relationship often starts flattening into maintenance mode. This is where many men become too passive. They wait for the relationship to generate energy on its own. They stop planning. Stop leading. Stop creating moments. Stop steering the emotional atmosphere. Then they are confused when the bond starts feeling stale. In Stoic discipline, Seneca's principle, no wind is favorable to the sailor who does not know to what port he is bound. Stoic-Apex translation: desire weakens when a relationship loses direction. A bond with no intentional movement becomes easier to inhabit as routine than as romance. Direction can look simple. Planning the evening, setting the tone, holding the standard, naming the next move, creating novelty, and protecting the bond from drift. That leadership matters because erotic energy often responds to masculine directional energy. Not because a woman cannot lead, but because polarity often strengthens when she can feel that the man is not passive inside the relationship. Direction says, I am here. I am engaged. I am not sleepwalking through us. I am not waiting for desire to happen to me. I am helping create the conditions where it can breathe. That is leadership in romantic form. So far, we have established 4 more foundations. First, routine kills tension when it has no counterbalance. Second, admiration and respect feed desire. Third, resentment poisons chemistry faster than most men realize. Fourth, masculine direction keeps the relationship from going flat. Emotional chaos destroys erotic polarity. Desire struggles to stay alive in an atmosphere of chronic emotional instability. A woman can tolerate stress. She can tolerate seasons. She can tolerate difficulty. What she cannot sustain indefinitely without cost is a bond where every disagreement becomes turbulence, every hard conversation becomes dysregulation, and every emotional moment becomes expensive. Erotic polarity weakens when the masculine presence in the relationship stops feeling grounded. In Neurobiological Security, Stan Tatkin's Secure Functioning Framework says, "Thou shalt not threaten the existence of the relationship." Stoic-Apex translation: desire cannot breathe where the nervous system keeps getting told the bond is unsafe. That does not only mean breakup threats. It also means emotional volatility, withdrawal as punishment, chaos as communication, and a relationship that feels unstable whenever tension arises. When a man is constantly reactive, flooded, suspicious, or severe, the bond stops feeling erotically charged and starts feeling biologically costly. Attraction gets crowded out by vigilance. Chemistry gets replaced by management. That is why long-term desire is not only a romantic issue. It is also a nervous system issue. If the relationship feels chronically unsafe, the body starts protecting instead of opening. A masculine man under Stoic-Apex does not create desire by making the bond feel uncertain. He creates desire by making his presence feel strong, stable, and clean enough that tension can exist without turning into a threat. That is the difference between erotic polarity and emotional chaos. One creates a charge. The other creates exhaustion. Over-explaining weakens desire. Many men think clarity always requires more words. It does not. In long-term relationships, over-explaining often reveals insecurity, not leadership. It can sound thoughtful on the surface, but underneath it usually carries hidden pressure. Understand me, validate me, agree with me, reassure me, do not leave me emotionally uncertain. That kills tension. In Toltec wisdom, Don Miguel Ruiz wrote, "Don't make assumptions." Stoic-Apex translation. If you want clarity, ask cleanly and speak directly. Do not flood the moment with nervous interpretation. That principle matters because over-explaining is often a form of assumption management. A man starts guessing what she thinks, what she meant, how she feels, what she might do next, and then he piles words into the room trying to control every possible interpretation. Now the energy shifts. He is no longer grounded. He is negotiating for emotional certainty. That weakens erotic weight. In Stoic discipline, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Stoic-Apex translation. Under relational pressure, say what is true and necessary. Do not add verbal excess just because uncertainty makes you uncomfortable. A masculine man can be clear without being word-heavy. He can be direct without being theatrical. He can name the issue without turning the conversation into a courtroom. That matters in attraction because desire responds better to clean presence than to emotional overprocessing. When a man starts talking too much to calm his own nervous system, the polarity often drops. Shorter. Cleaner. Truer. That is usually stronger. Scarcity, space, and individuality protect attraction. Long-term desire often weakens when two people stop being distinct. Not when they become close. When they become fused, fusion removes tension. It removes the edge. It removes the sense that each person is still carrying their own center, rhythm, mission, and gravity. A woman may want closeness, but she rarely wants collapse. Protect attraction is where masculine individuality matters. A man protects desire when he keeps his standards, his direction, his body, his friendships, his work, and his inner life intact. Not as a game. Not as a distance theater. As a structure. In Machiavellian strategy, Niccolo Machiavelli emphasized, "Few experience what you really are." Stoic-Apex translation. Do not become so emotionally overexposed that all mystery, depth, and masculine reserve disappear from the bond. That does not mean hiding. It means preserving dimension. A woman should know you. She should trust you. She should feel your love. But she should also still feel that you are a man with depth she cannot fully consume. That is part of what keeps desire alive. Polarity needs a little air. Space. Distinctness. Individual stance. Without that, the relationship can become warm but flat, loyal but asexual, stable but depolarized. Protecting attraction is why scarcity is not only about time apart. It is about not making yourself so psychologically overavailable that nothing about your presence carries weight anymore. The man who keeps his shape keeps more of his erotic charge. Reassurance chasing turns attraction into caretaking. There is a major difference between healthy reassurance and chronic reassurance chasing. Healthy reassurance is human. Chronic reassurance chasing is corrosive. When a man repeatedly asks the relationship to calm fears he refuses to confront within himself, the dynamic often changes. The woman stops feeling him as a masculine presence and begins to feel him as a nervous system she must constantly stabilize. That is where attraction often begins to erode. In Toltec wisdom, Don Miguel Ruiz wrote, "Nothing others do is because of you." Stoic-Apex translation. Stop turning every silence, mood, delay, or emotional shift into evidence that your value is under review. That one correction matters deeply because reassurance chasing is usually not about love. It is about self-doubt looking for relief. It sounds like, "Are we okay? Do you still want me? Why are you quiet? What changed? Please tell me where I stand." Once in a while, that may be honest. Repeatedly, it becomes pressure. And pressure is rarely erotic. The more a man chases reassurance, the more he asks the woman to carry his internal stability. That turns polarity into caretaking. A stronger, more masculine move is to read behavior, stay observant, ask clearly when needed, and refuse to make uncertainty the center of the bond. You do not preserve desire by demanding constant proof. You preserve it by becoming a man who remains grounded as reality reveals itself. That is harder. And far more attractive. So far, we have established 4 more foundations. First, emotional chaos destroys erotic polarity. Second, masculine over-explaining weakens desire. Third, scarcity, space, and individuality protect attraction. Fourth, reassurance chasing turns attraction into caretaking. Masculine leadership sustains desire over time. Long-term desire does not survive on chemistry alone. It survives when the relationship keeps feeling led, protected, and alive. Stan Tatkin's neurobiological security: protect the safety and security of the relationship at all costs. Protect the bond first. Stoic-Apex translation: masculine leadership keeps desire stronger when the woman feels both your structure and your care. Not control. Not passivity. Leadership. That leadership is practical. It means you do not let the bond drift into emotional neglect, sexual passivity, chronic resentment, or directionless routine. You help protect the atmosphere. You address problems before they calcify. You bring steadiness when pressure rises. You bring intentionally when the relationship starts flattening. Desire often lasts longer when a woman can still feel: this man is present, this man is carrying something, this man is not asleep inside the relationship, this man can lead emotionally without becoming controlling. That is one of the deepest masculine functions in long-term attraction. Attraction can be repaired after drift. Many men think attraction either exists or doesn't. That is too simplistic. Attraction can drift. It can flatten. It can get covered by resentment, fatigue, overfamiliarity, poor tone, unspoken hurt, emotional chaos, or loss of polarity. But drift is not always death. Dr. John Gottman's and the Gottman Institute emphasize: turn towards your partner's bids for connection. Stoic-Apex translation: when attraction weakens, do not wait for some giant cinematic fix. Start turning back toward connection in disciplined and repeated ways. That means, repair tone, repair emotional safety, repair touch, repair leadership, repair honesty, repair play, and repair the atmosphere. Long-term desire often returns through a series of smaller corrections that restore admiration, trust, tension, and warmth. The man who waits passively for attraction to reappear usually loses more ground. The man who starts making clean repairs gives the bond a real chance to reawaken. Attraction is not about begging for chemistry. It is about rebuilding the conditions that allow chemistry to breathe again. Commitment and polarity can coexist. One of the most harmful lies in modern relationships is that commitment kills desire. Commitment does not kill desire. Rather, collapsed polarity kills desire. Ungoverned familiarity kills desire. Neediness, resentment, and passivity kill desire. That matters because some men try to preserve desire by becoming harder, colder, more distant, or more performative. But polarity does not require ego inflation. It requires structure, difference, and masculine steadiness. So yes, commitment and polarity can coexist. Deep love and erotic tension can coexist. Safety and attraction can coexist. But only when the man keeps his shape. Protect desire without self-abandonment. Do not chase desire through self-erasure. Do not preserve closeness by becoming shapeless. Do not try to keep attraction alive by pleading, proving, or over-accommodating. Don Miguel Ruiz and Toltec Integrity anchors this with "be impeccable with your word." Stoic-Apex translation: long-term desire survives best when a man stays honest, clean, direct, and self-respecting inside the relationship. Sexual polarity and long-term desire are not maintained by manipulation. They are not maintained by desperation. They are not maintained by romantic passivity. They are maintained by self-command, truth alignment, power awareness, nervous system mastery, and egoless strength. That is the Stoic-Apex way. So here is the closing question. In your relationship, are you preserving desire by becoming more grounded, cleaner, and more directed? Or are you trying to preserve it by chasing reassurance and abandoning your shape? Build until the answer changes. If this episode gave language to something you have lived but never fully named, subscribe, stay with Stoic-Apex, and comment, protect desire without self-abandonment. Stoic-Apex.